So, Harv, we're at Monte Blanco in Spain. You've just finished 4 days of testing at this kind of circuit that nobody's ever really heard of. This is almost a new bike for 2015. What have you changed through the development process from the bike that Alex won the championship on through 2015 to the bikes that Dan and Jason are riding now?
First of all, I think you need to understand that the machine that we had in 2013 with Alex on board, it was very much, we had a lot of ideas and direction that we wanted to move in, but due to the nature of the championship and testing and development costs and everything else, we were unable to implement those. So, like I said, with the direction we've gone with the fuel tank and swinging arm, were all possibilities and areas that we were moving forward through in 2013. Obviously with the team not being in BSB for 2014 as a running team, only doing the 4 wildcards, it was key then for us to develop those products, to be able to evaluate with the view to come forward and start the season in 2015. And I've got to say, Ian and Paul have done a great job, and likewise with Jason and Julian on board last year, testing, developing some of the parts, and Jason here this weekend riding the various components that he had input in for development through last year. So from the fuel tank, from the bodywork, from the swinging arm, from linkage to quite a few other bits and pieces, subframe and everything else, it's all working really, really well. Really pleased with the product, really pleased with the development, and so far on track, everything's looking very good for a very good starting point for 2015.
Is it fair to say this is probably a pretty big year for Honda after having a year out, and then you're coming back into the championship, obviously with a view to winning it?
The thing for us, leaving it in 2013, having won with Alex, fantastic season. Obviously disappointing not being able to be involved in 2014, but that all said, I think it was needed for Honda, all of us, to be able to regroup and come into 2015 the way we are. The fact is that, like I said, the development side of it's still there. There's still a lot of things to test, develop going forward. Yes, it's obviously important to be coming back into the championship and being at the sharp end. Of course it is. The fact of the matter, Dan finishing 5th in the championship last year, Jason moving up from Superstock into Superbike. The testing here, time's not so different from both riders, which is kind of what we thought where we would be with both of them. The Monte Blanco circuit has been great facilities, great testing for us. Obviously we've got some work to do from here coming back into March, but at the end of the day, the championship and the approach to it all is obviously very important to Honda.
You've picked, well, your first 2 picks of riders were 2 relative youngsters. What were kind of the thoughts behind Dan and Jason, as opposed to going for trying to put in a big name and then another maybe cheaper youngster?
Well, first of all, Jason has been with the team now for 4 or 5 years, into his 5th year, and it was always the plan with Jason to elevate him into the Superbike Championship. If I'm honest, when we thought he was ready to make that transition. And we set a few goals out for Jason over the last couple of years, that if we reach this, then you will be in the Superbike team for the following year. Again, last year, looking at options for riders, we had various names and riders that we were considering and in discussion with, and at the end of the day, you've got to look at what is available to you at that given time, and Dan was in the picture there, and it all made sense to sign Dan and work with him and Jason coming forward, bearing in mind, like you've said earlier, so many changes to the machine and everything else. without having any other riders with any preconceived conceptions of the machine or the bike or anything else, and having a very open, broad mind approach to it all. And you know, like I said, so far it's working really, really well for us.
Now, a week or so ago, you announced you were pulling Jenny Tinmouth into the Honda UK racing outfit, which I personally think is a great idea. A few people would have been shocked by it. What prompted you to make that kind of big decision?
Right back to 2013 again, when Jenny and I had spoken once or twice, and we'd looked or discussed a few ideas of support and what we could do. And I did say to Jenny, I said, Jenny, look, get in touch with Neg, get some communication going, because there may be something there that we can do. And that, like I said, that started in 2014. And I remember Nick calling, you know, dropping a line saying, "Oh, I've tried to get hold of Jenny, not had anything to reply, and so on and so on." And subsequently find that Jenny's away filming and working elsewhere, and hence the lack of communication. By the by, putting all that aside, obviously Jenny met up with Nick prior to the NEC show. Had a very good conversation of direction and everything else of what Honda were viewing, considering possibilities. And you've got to remember that Honda are pushing the female attendance, if you like, within motorsport. We've got Natalie Kane in motocross in MX2, and the whole story and theme and everything, if you like, with Jenny coming on board all made perfect sense for the PR, for the relationship that we are looking to develop going forward. And you know, she's been around, it's fastest female at the TT at present, and she's got a good following. She's worked hard, you know, herself. She's obviously built and prepared her own bike, and you know, she's got her own workshop and everything for preparing and servicing road machines. And it all just sort of made sense, you know, provided we could get the package and the support to be able to do the job properly.
Now, she'll come down here testing with you in the middle of March.
Yes.
What are you kind of expecting of her from that test?
It's an interesting one, because obviously it'll be the first time that she'll be able to get to ride our current specification Fireblade, and obviously the bike that she will start off with will be at a base setting, if you like, from Dan and Jason, of all the inputs and development that we've gone through the tests here in January. So for me, for Jenny to get out literally, and what we're after for Jenny for those 4 days on track there, we just need laps and laps of information from her, for her to understand the machine and for us to understand Jenny. And you know, I'm sure we're going to get that. Jenny's really looking forward to getting on board and getting on the machine and joining the team and start having some input into the development of her machine.
Have you set kind of any goals for the BSB 2015, or are the goals to come later in the season when you've kind of assessed where she is?
Well, you know, let's not be too controversial or anything here. You know, we've got clear goals of where we want Jenny to be. You know, and at the end of the day, you know, it'd be fantastic if we can get her into Q2 on a regular basis and be in that area. And the other key thing is to start every race and finish every race. Clearly, those are goals that every rider would love to take on board and achieve. That clearly doesn't happen every year. I think Dan's the only rider last year to finish every race. You know, there's 30 odd riders, and this year there's a bigger field. So you know, that's clearly a big goal for us, and I'm sure that with the input from the team and having two other riders, teammates, that Jenny will have a lot of access to a lot of information and data and support that she's not had available to her in the past at any level of racing. So I'm hoping that Jenny can be like a sponge, if you like, and take on board as much as possible to help her with her riding style and approach into the championship for 2015.
Do you think there's going to be some male riders who are going to get a bit of a shock?
For sure. You know.